The courthouse was old, its brick walls weathered by decades of trials, scandals, and whispered secrets. But on this particular morning, the air felt heavier than usual, as though the very building knew something big was about to happen. People filled every wooden bench, shoulder to shoulder, murmuring in hushed tones. Reporters sat near the front, their notepads ready, cameras positioned at respectful angles. A handful of police officers stood along the back wall, arms crossed, their presence a silent reminder of just how serious this case was. At the center of it all sat Michael Trent, the accused. He looked out of place in the crisp white shirt his attorney had insisted he wear. His hair was combed, his hands folded neatly on the table, but the exhaustion in his eyes betrayed how many sleepless nights he had endured. This was the day that would decide his fate. Michael had been accused of a string of burglaries that had shaken the small town. The evidence against him sounded convincing on paper. Eyewitness accounts, a suspicious footprint, and most damning of all, a police canine who had allegedly tracked the suspect from the scene straight to Michael's home. That canine was here now. At the prosecutor's side sat Duke, a massive German shepherd with a glossy coat and sharp amber eyes. His handler, Officer Ryan Cole, sat next to him, hand resting on the leash. Duke was a legend in the county, a dog whose nose had helped close dozens of cases. To the jury, his presence alone was persuasive. If Duke said this man was guilty, then surely he was. In the very back of the room, almost unnoticed, sat Emily Parker, a young woman in her mid-20s, with soft brown hair pulled into a loose bun. On her lap was her daughter, Lily, a 3-year-old with golden curls and the kind of bright, curious eyes that noticed everything. Lily clutched a worn-out stuffed bunny, holding it close to her chest. Emily hadn't planned to be here. She wasn't family to the accused, nor did she have any personal stake in the case, at least not at first. She had come because she couldn't shake something Lily had told her weeks ago. Her sister lived only a block away from the house that had been burglarized, and they had been visiting that night. Lily had been playing outside, running through the yard, when police cars arrived with their lights flashing. Emily had rushed to scoop her up and bring her inside, but Lily had seen things she couldn't quite explain at the time. It had taken weeks for Lily to talk about it. She was so little that Emily assumed she had just been confused. But when the trial date was announced, Lily had pointed to the newspaper clipping of Duke, the canine who supposedly cracked the case, and said something that made Emily stop cold. "That's not the doggy." Emily didn't know why she had come today. Maybe just to settle her conscience. Maybe to make sure she was wrong. The room quieted as Judge Whitmore entered, a tall man with a commanding presence. His robe swished as he took his seat, his gavel striking once. "This court is now in session," he said, his deep voice echoing through the room. The prosecutor rose and began his opening remarks, laying out the case with practiced confidence. He painted Michael as a desperate man, one who had stolen from his neighbors to support himself. Then he gestured toward Duke. "And this," he said, smiling faintly, "is our most reliable witness." Duke tracked the suspect's scent from the crime scene directly to the defendant's front door. "This is not guesswork, ladies and gentlemen. This is science." Several jurors nodded. Michael's attorney shifted uncomfortably, scribbling notes on his legal pad. Duke sat motionless, alert but calm, as though he understood the weight of the moment. From the back, Emily felt Lily stir. The little girl sat up straighter, her gaze fixed on the dog. For a long moment, she didn't blink, her tiny hands squeezing her stuffed bunny. "Mommy," she whispered, tugging Emily's sleeve. Emily bent down, expecting Lily to ask for a snack or to go outside. But instead, Lily said something else, something Emily hadn't expected to hear at all. "That's not him," she whispered. Emily froze. Her first instinct was to hush her. This was a courtroom, and the last thing she wanted was to disturb the proceedings. But Lily didn't stop staring. Emily looked closer at the dog. She had never been this near to Duke before. He was impressive, powerful, dignified, clearly well-trained. But there was nothing unusual about him. Nothing that stood out as different. Except Lily had been so sure when she first said it. Emily's heart started pounding. What if her daughter was right? She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, drawing the attention of the bailiff, who glanced at her but said nothing. At the front of the room, the prosecutor finished his statement and sat down. The judge nodded toward the defense attorney, signaling it was his turn to present his opening argument. But Emily wasn't listening. Lily was still whispering softly to herself, repeating the same phrase. Not the doggy. Not the doggy. Emily's palms were sweating now. She knew her daughter wasn't the type to make up stories. She also knew that speaking up in the middle of a trial was risky. But if there was even a chance that something was wrong with the evidence, if the wrong man was about to be convicted because of a mistake, could she really stay silent? Emily hugged Lily close, trying to keep her calm, but the little girl was restless now. Duke shifted slightly, and Lily tensed. Her wide eyes stayed locked on him. And then, just as the defense attorney rose to speak, Lily suddenly stood on her mother's lap, pointed at Duke, and shouted in a voice that rang through the entire courtroom. Doggy! Every head turned. The judge frowned. Order in the court. Emily's face flushed as she tried to pull her daughter back down, but Lily wasn't done. She pointed again, her tiny finger unwavering, and spoke 2 more words. Words that made the entire courtroom go silent. Wrong dog. The silence was deafening. Michael Trent looked up from the table, eyes wide. The defense attorney froze mid-step. Even the prosecutor blinked in surprise, his confidence faltering for the first time that day. Officer Cole tightened his grip on Duke's leash. The judge stared at the little girl for a long moment before turning to Emily. Ma'am, he said slowly, would you please come forward with your daughter? Emily's heart raced as she stood. She didn't know what would happen next, only that whatever came after this moment, nothing in this courtroom would ever be the same again. Emily's legs felt like they were made of stone as she walked down the narrow aisle toward the front of the courtroom, holding Lily close. Every pair of eyes followed them. Jurors, reporters, officers, all waiting to see what the judge would do next. Lily clung to her stuffed bunny, but kept pointing toward Duke, her little brow furrowed with determination. When they reached the front, Judge Whitmore gestured for Emily to step closer to the witness stand. State your name for the record, he said, his tone surprisingly gentle despite the break in protocol. Emily Parker, she replied nervously, adjusting Lily on her hip. The judge nodded. And this is your daughter? Yes, sir. Her name is Lily. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, folding his hands. Miss Parker, do you understand that interrupting court proceedings is not taken lightly? If you and your child have information relevant to this case, I will allow you to speak briefly, but I warn you, this is a very serious matter. Emily swallowed hard. I understand, Your Honor, but I think my daughter saw something that could be important. The prosecutor stood quickly. Your Honor, with all due respect, this is highly irregular. A 3-year-old is hardly a credible witness. The judge raised a hand, silencing him. I am aware of that, Mr. Green, but when a child points at the primary piece of evidence in my courtroom and says, wrong dog, I think we can all agree it deserves at least 5 minutes of our time. A murmur of agreement rippled through the spectators. The judge looked at Lily. Young lady, can you tell me what you meant? Lily turned her big eyes toward him, but stayed quiet. Emily rubbed her back reassuringly. Sweetheart, she whispered, can you tell the nice judge what you told Mommy? Lily pointed at Duke again. Not the doggy, she said, her voice clear but soft. Judge Whitmore's brow furrowed. What do you mean, not the doggy? Emily took a breath. Your Honor, my daughter and I were visiting my sister on the night of the burglary. Her house is just a block from where it happened. Lily was outside playing when the police arrived. She saw the dog that was there that night. She says this isn't the same one. The prosecutor scoffed. With respect, Your Honor, we can't rely on a toddler's memory to. But the defense attorney was already on his feet, excitement in his eyes. Your Honor, this could be crucial. If the wrong canine's tracking report was used as evidence, then the entire case against my client is compromised. I request an immediate recess to verify whether Officer Cole's dog, Duke, was even at the scene. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Officer Cole's jaw tightened, his grip on Duke's leash firm. Your Honor, Duke was there, he said quickly. He tracked the scent, just like the report says. The judge turned to him. You are absolutely certain? Yes, sir, Cole replied. But something in his tone was defensive, not confident. The judge seemed to notice. He tapped his gavel lightly. Court will recess for 1 hour. Bailiff, arrange for dispatch logs, body cam footage, and any available surveillance from that night to be reviewed immediately. If there is even a chance that the wrong evidence was submitted, I want to know about it before we go any further. Gasps and whispers filled the room as everyone stood. Reporters rushed to call their editors, smelling a sensational headline. Emily carried Lily back to her seat, her heart still hammering. Mommy, doggy wrong? Lily asked softly. Yes, sweetheart, Emily said, kissing her daughter's forehead. You did the right thing. At the defense table, Michael Trent turned in his seat to look at them. For the first time since the trial began, there was something in his eyes besides fear, a glimmer of hope. During recess, the courtroom became a hive of activity. Officers moved quickly to retrieve the evidence the judge requested. A technician wheeled in a laptop and connected it to the courtroom monitors. When the judge returned and called everyone back to order, the atmosphere had completely shifted. The prosecutor no longer looked so confident. Mr. Green, the judge said, have you reviewed the surveillance footage? Yes, Your Honor, Green replied stiffly. The footage from the gas station camera shows a different canine at the scene. The room erupted. You mean to tell me, the judge said, his voice sharp now, that the dog used as evidence in this case was not the dog who was actually there that night? Green hesitated. It appears there was a mix-up in the paperwork. Officer Cole's report was filed instead of the other units, but the other dog would have reached the same conclusion. The defense attorney cut him off. That is speculation, not fact. The entire case is built on a false tracking report. This man has been sitting in jail for 3 months, based on evidence that is now invalid. The judge turned his stern gaze on Officer Cole. Officer, do you have an explanation for this? Cole's face flushed. It was a busy night, Your Honor. Multiple calls, multiple dogs working. I must have gotten the dates mixed up. The defense attorney stepped closer, seizing the moment. Or perhaps you knew that using Duke's record, a record nearly spotless, would strengthen the case against my client. Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The judge sighed, rubbing his temple. We will need to hear from the other K9 handler before this trial can proceed. Bailiff, have him subpoenaed immediately. Yes, Your Honor, the bailiff said, hurrying from the room. Emily held Lily close, unsure what would happen next, but knowing deep down that her daughter had just changed the entire course of the trial. Michael turned again, meeting Emily's eyes. He mouthed the words, "Thank you." For the first time in months, he felt like someone believed him. But the tension in the room hadn't lessened. If Officer Cole's report was false, that raised serious questions, not just about this case, but about every case Duke had ever been part of. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. A few even began live-streaming updates from the courthouse steps during the break, their voices breathless with excitement. Inside, the judge called a brief second recess to give the other handler time to arrive. The clock ticked slowly as everyone waited. When the bailiff finally returned, he wasn't alone. A man in uniform stepped into the courtroom, the other K-9 handler. His face was pale, his posture tense. He took the witness stand and swore in, his voice quiet. "Tell us," the judge said, "was your dog the one who tracked the scent that night?" The handler nodded. "Yes, sir. My K-9 Rex was the first on scene. We tracked a scent away from the house toward an empty field. But I was called off early because Rex cut his paw on some broken glass. Another unit took over. And was that other unit Officer Cole and Duke?" The judge pressed. The handler hesitated. "No, sir. They were never called to that scene. At least, not while I was there." The courtroom exploded with noise. The judge banged his gavel. "Order." Emily felt goosebumps rise on her arms. This was no longer just about a paperwork error. This was about truth and justice. She glanced at Lily, who had gone quiet now, resting her head on her mother's shoulder, as if satisfied that someone was finally listening. The judge looked toward the prosecutor. "Mr. Green, we have a very serious problem. Until I know how this happened, I am not willing to proceed with this trial." The prosecutor nodded reluctantly. "Understood, Your Honor." The judge turned toward Officer Cole. "Officer, you will remain in this courtroom until we determine whether this was a mistake or a deliberate act. If there was misconduct involved, I will not hesitate to take action." Cole's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Michael sat straighter now, his attorney whispering rapidly in his ear. The entire case was beginning to unravel, and everyone knew it. But no one yet knew just how deep this went. The judge struck his gavel once more. "We will reconvene after lunch. This court is in recess." As everyone filed out, Emily stayed seated for a moment, clutching Lily. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that what they were about to uncover would be far bigger than one man's trial. And she was right. When court resumed after lunch, the energy in the room felt entirely different. The confident hum from earlier that morning had been replaced with uneasy murmurs. Everyone sensed that the case was beginning to slip through the prosecution's fingers. Michael Trent sat straighter at the defense table, his attorney whispering strategy into his ear. For the first time since the trial began, he didn't look like a man about to lose everything. He looked like someone who just might walk out of here free. At the prosecution's table, however, tension was thick. Mr. Green, the prosecutor, flipped through his notes furiously, his usual polished calm replaced by a tight jaw and a sheen of sweat on his brow. And then there was Officer Cole. He hadn't moved from his seat during recess. Duke lay at his feet, calm as ever, but Cole's posture was rigid. He stared at the floor, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. The leash in his hand was pulled taut, his knuckles white. The judge entered, and the room fell silent once more. "Officer Cole," Judge Whitmore began, "before we proceed, you will explain to this court how your report and your dog were involved in a case you were never officially called to. And I warn you, officer, this court does not look kindly on dishonesty." Cole's Adam's apple bobbed. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually refuse to answer. Then, in a low voice, he said, "I believed we had the right man. There were multiple calls that night, Your Honor. Things were chaotic. The other unit's report was incomplete, and the case was going nowhere. I thought if I filed mine under the same incident number, we could lock this guy up before he slipped away." Gasps filled the room. "You falsified a report?" the judge said sharply. Cole's jaw tightened. I adjusted it. Duke's track didn't actually start at the crime scene, but he's never been wrong before. I knew he would have led us there if we'd been called in time. I just made it official. Emily felt her stomach twist. She looked down at Lily, who had gone very quiet, her small hand gripping her stuffed bunny tighter. The defense attorney stood, his voice ringing through the courtroom. Your Honor, this is a blatant violation of due process. The state's entire case rests on a fabricated track record. My client has been sitting in jail for 3 months for a crime he didn't commit, all because an officer decided his gut feeling was more reliable than the law. The judge nodded grimly. You are correct, Counselor. But we will hear from the other witnesses before I make any ruling. The second canine handler was called back to the stand. He recounted the night of the burglary in detail, explaining how Rex had tracked a scent away from the victim's house, not toward Michael's. He described finding footprints in the mud leading to a wooded area, footprints that were never photographed or cast because he was called off before evidence techs arrived. This was crucial evidence, the defense attorney said, turning to the jury. Evidence that was ignored because someone wanted a faster result. How many other pieces of the truth were discarded? The jurors shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Green tried to recover, calling the victim to the stand. The middle-aged homeowner testified that he had seen someone running away that night, a man of similar build to Michael. But under cross-examination, it became clear that the homeowner had only caught a glimpse of the suspect from behind in the dark. Could you say with 100% certainty that it was my client you saw? The defense attorney asked. The man hesitated. No, he admitted softly. The defense attorney turned back to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, the state wants you to convict a man based on a dog who wasn't even at the scene and a witness who isn't sure what he saw. Is that justice? Even the spectators could feel the case slipping through the prosecutor's fingers. The judge called a short break. Reporters rushed outside again to broadcast the latest bombshell. An officer confessing to falsifying a report was headline news. Emily remained seated, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected things to escalate this far. She had only wanted to do the right thing. But now she realized this wasn't just about Michael anymore. This was about the integrity of the entire police department. When court reconvened, Judge Whitmore addressed the room. This court is deeply troubled by what has been revealed today. Before we proceed further, I will allow the jury to hear directly from Officer Cole under oath. Cole was called to the stand. His shoulders were tense, his face pale. The bailiff handed him a Bible, and he swore to tell the truth. Officer Cole, the defense attorney began, you have admitted to falsifying your report. Were you under pressure from anyone in your department to close this case quickly? Cole hesitated. Yes. The courtroom erupted again. Who pressured you? Cole's lips pressed into a thin line. The chief wanted results. There'd been a string of burglaries in the area, and the community was demanding answers. We had no solid leads. I thought we had our guy, so I made it fit. You made it fit, the attorney repeated. Meaning you took an innocent man and built a case against him to calm the public? Cole didn't answer, but his silence said everything. The judge's expression hardened. Officer Cole, you have not only jeopardized this case, but undermined public trust in law enforcement. Do you realize the gravity of your actions? Yes, Your Honor, Cole said quietly. The judge looked as though he might dismiss the case right then and there, but instead he turned to the prosecutor. Mr. Green, do you wish to continue? Green swallowed hard. Your Honor, I request time to reassess the evidence. The judge granted him until the following morning. As everyone filed out of the courtroom, Michael remained seated for a long moment, staring at the floor. Then he stood, turning to face Emily and Lily. Thank you. he said softly. His voice cracked on the words. Emily nodded, her throat tight. Lily just smiled and said, "Wrong doggy." Michael actually laughed, the sound strange after months of silence and fear. "Yeah," he said. "Wrong doggy." But as Emily gathered her things and prepared to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst wasn't over yet. Cole's testimony had opened a door, and whatever lay on the other side was about to turn the entire case upside down. The next morning, the courthouse was packed to overflowing. Word of Officer Cole's testimony had spread across the city overnight. News crews crowded the steps outside, cameras flashing as spectators filed in. Inside, tension buzzed like electricity. Everyone knew that today could change everything, not just for Michael Trent, but for the entire department. Emily held Lily's hand tighter as they entered. She couldn't shake the heaviness in her chest. She had been proud of what she did yesterday, proud that she had spoken up, but now the weight of it felt overwhelming. She could feel every pair of eyes in the courtroom on her, as if they all knew she was the reason this had come to light. Officer Cole sat at the witness stand again, his shoulders slumped, looking like a man awaiting his own sentencing. Duke lay at his feet, calm but watchful, sensing his handler's stress. Judge Whitmore banged his gavel, calling the court to order. "Mr. Green," the judge said, "have you reviewed the evidence?" Green stood, his voice tight. "Yes, Your Honor. In light of Officer Cole's testimony, the state concedes that the original report was compromised. However, we maintain that there is still circumstantial evidence linking Mr. Trent to the crime. We request to call one final witness." The defense attorney objected immediately. "Your Honor, this case is crumbling. The state should dismiss before any further injustice is done." But the judge allowed the witness. The bailiff opened the side door, and Emily's stomach dropped when she saw who walked in. Chief Daniels, the man who had led the department for over a decade, who had pinned medals on Cole and Duke for their service, who had stood before cameras and promised justice to the community. He took the stand with the kind of measured calm only a seasoned officer possessed. His uniform was immaculate, his posture perfect. "Chief Daniels," Green said, "can you tell the court why there was so much pressure to close this case?" The chief nodded. There had been a series of break-ins targeting elderly homeowners. The community was terrified. The mayor wanted answers. The press wanted answers. We were under tremendous pressure to deliver results. "And did you personally order Officer Cole to alter his report?" Danielle's jaw tightened. "No, I told him we needed results. I told him the public couldn't wait forever. But I never ordered him to falsify anything." The defense attorney stood for cross-examination, his voice sharp. "Chief, you are telling this court that your words had no influence on how your officers handled this investigation." Daniels looked at him evenly. "My officers know the law. They know right from wrong. If one of them cut corners, that was his decision, not mine." Cole's head snapped up at that. For the first time, anger flashed across his face. "That's not true," he said suddenly, his voice ringing through the room. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Whitmore frowned. "Officer Cole, you will speak only when asked." "No, Your Honor," Cole interrupted. "I can't sit here and let him lie. He told me to do it. He said we couldn't afford another unsolved case. He said, and I quote, 'Make it stick.'" Gasps erupted from the gallery. Daniel's face hardened. "That's a lie?" "It's not a lie." Cole shot back. "You told me if we didn't close this case, we'd all be answering to City Hall. You said my career would be on the line. I didn't want to lose Duke. I didn't want to lose everything I worked for. So I made it stick." The two men stared at each other, the air between them crackling with years of loyalty and betrayal. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! I will have order in this courtroom." When silence finally fell, the judge turned to the chief. "Chief Daniels, do you wish to respond?" Daniels straightened. "Your Honor, I stand by my statement. I never ordered anyone to falsify evidence, but the damage was done." The jury had seen the anger in Cole's eyes, heard the desperation in his voice. The defense attorney seized the moment. "Your Honor, this is no longer just about my client. This is about a department willing to sacrifice the truth to satisfy public opinion. I move for an immediate dismissal of all charges." Green tried to object, but his voice faltered. Even he seemed shaken by what had just unfolded. The judge didn't rule immediately. "I will consider your motion. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning." As everyone began filing out, the atmosphere was charged. Reporters shouted questions. Spectators whispered furiously. Emily gathered Lily in her arms, her heart pounding. "Mommy," Lily whispered, "is the man going home now?" Emily swallowed hard. "Maybe soon, baby." But as she turned to leave, she noticed something. Chief Daniels wasn't leaving the courtroom with the others. He was speaking in a low voice to two men in plain clothes near the side door. Men Emily didn't recognize. And then one of them glanced toward Cole, who was still sitting with Duke, and nodded. A chill ran through Emily. Something about the exchange felt wrong, threatening. She reached for Cole's arm as she passed. "Be careful," she whispered. He looked at her, surprised. "Why?" But before she could answer, one of the plainclothes men stepped forward and handed him a folded piece of paper. Cole unfolded it, his brow furrowing as he read. Then all the color drained from his face. Emily tried to see what was written, but he folded it quickly and shoved it into his pocket. "What did it say?" she asked. Cole didn't answer. He just clipped Duke's leash back on and left through the side door, his posture suddenly tense and alert. Emily stood frozen for a long moment, her instincts screaming that something terrible was about to happen. Tomorrow's hearing would decide Michael Trent's fate. But tonight felt like the calm before a storm. And somewhere deep down, Emily knew the storm was coming for all of them. The sun had long set by the time Emily finally got Lily home. The house was quiet, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She couldn't shake the image of Chief Daniels whispering to those plainclothes men. And that note Cole had been given, the way his face had drained of color, it haunted her. Lily had fallen asleep quickly, curled up with her stuffed bear, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing outside their little world. Emily stood at the kitchen window, staring into the dark street. Her phone buzzed suddenly, making her jump. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Keep your daughter out of court tomorrow. No good will come from her being there." Emily's heart skipped. She read it twice, 3 times, before her hands started to shake. Who would send this? She almost called the police, but after what she'd witnessed in court, who could she trust? Before she could decide, there was a knock at the door. Her stomach dropped. She hesitated, then peeked through the peephole. It was Officer Cole. She quickly unlocked the door. "You scared me half to death," she whispered. Cole stepped inside, Duke at his side, the big shepherd's ears perked and alert. Cole's face was pale, his eyes bloodshot. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Emily poured him a cup of coffee while he sat heavily at the table, Duke lying close by as if guarding him. "That note you saw me get today," Cole began, pulling a crumpled paper from his pocket. "It said I should stay quiet tomorrow. Or else." Emily felt her breath catch. "Or else what?" Cole shook his head. "They didn't say. But I've been on the force long enough to know a threat when I see one." "Who gave it to you?" "One of Daniel's guys," Cole said bitterly. "Plainclothes, no name tag. He handed it over like it was nothing. And now..." He glanced toward the window. I think I'm being followed. Emily's eyes widened. Followed? Cole nodded. On my way here, I saw the same car behind me for 3 miles. No headlights. When I turned, they turned. When I stopped, they kept going, slow. Duke let out a low growl, as if confirming his handler's unease. Cole, you can't go back to your apartment tonight, Emily said. You're not safe. He hesitated, clearly torn. I can't just run. Tomorrow's hearing is everything. If I don't testify again, they might toss this whole case out. Daniels will walk away clean. Emily nodded. Then stay here tonight. At least until morning. You and Duke can sleep in the guest room. Cole finally agreed, exhaustion etched on his face. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Emily found herself lying awake, listening to every creak and rustle of the house. At around 2 a.m., she heard Duke growl softly again. She froze. Then came the sound of tires crunching gravel outside. Emily crept to the window and peered out through the curtain. A dark sedan sat idling across the street, its lights off. Her blood turned to ice. She tiptoed to Cole's room and shook him awake. Someone's outside. Cole was on his feet instantly, pulling on his holster. Duke was already at the door, his entire body tense, ears forward. Cole glanced out the window, cursed under his breath, and grabbed his phone. Stay with Lily, he ordered. Before she could answer, he and Duke slipped quietly out the back door. Emily stood there, heart hammering, straining to hear what was happening. Then came the sound of footsteps, shouting and Duke barking, deep and fierce. A car engine roared to life. Tires squealed. Moments later, Cole returned, breathing hard. They were watching the house, he said grimly. 2 men inside that car. When I approached, they drove off. Emily felt sick. They know where I live. What if they come back? Cole looked at her seriously. Then we need to be ready. Tomorrow is going to be dangerous, not just for me, but for anyone who stands up in that courtroom. He hesitated before adding, Emily, I need you to think about whether Lily should testify again. If anything happens. Emily looked toward the bedroom where her daughter slept, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. The thought of pulling her into this again made her stomach twist. But then she thought of Michael Trent sitting in a cell, waiting for the truth to set him free. We'll be there, Emily said firmly. This started with her. She deserves to see it through. Cole didn't argue. He just nodded once, a look of grim respect on his face. The rest of the night passed without incident, but Emily didn't sleep at all. As dawn broke, she sat at the kitchen table, staring into her untouched coffee, thinking of everything that could go wrong. When Cole came in, freshly showered and dressed for court, she felt a pang of dread. Whatever happens today, she said quietly, promise me Duke stays with you. Cole managed a small smile. Always. They left the house together, Duke trotting faithfully beside his handler. Across the street, the same dark sedan was parked again. This time, Cole didn't look away. He reached down, unclipped Duke's leash, and gave a quiet command. Duke padded forward, muscles taut, eyes locked on the car. The sedan's engine started, and then sped off, disappearing around the corner. Cole gave a humorless laugh. Yeah, that's what I thought. But Emily knew this wasn't over. If anything, the danger was just beginning. And as they drove toward the courthouse, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was determined to stop them before they could speak the truth. The courthouse steps were swarming with reporters by the time Emily, Lily, Cole, and Duke arrived. Cameras clicked, microphones waved, and voices called out questions. Questions Emily had no intention of answering. Cole kept one hand near Duke's harness as they climbed the stairs. His eyes never stopped scanning the crowd. Stay close, he murmured. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. Everyone seemed to know something explosive was about to happen. Michael Trent sat at the defense table, his face gaunt, but his eyes brighter than they had been in weeks. He nodded gratefully at Emily when he saw her and Lily. The bailiff called for order, and Judge Whitmore entered, his expression grave. "This hearing will determine whether the charges against the defendant are dismissed," he said. "But first, Officer Cole, please return to the stand." Cole rose, Duke following him faithfully to the front. Emily's stomach tightened. She knew every word he spoke today could decide not only Michael's fate, but also what happened to Cole, and possibly to her family. Green, the prosecutor, approached with a tight jaw. "Officer Cole," he began, "you testified yesterday that Chief Daniels pressured you to close this case. Are you prepared to stand by that statement today, under oath, despite the consequences to your career?" Cole glanced at Duke, then at Emily. He took a breath. "Yes, I stand by it." Green's voice sharpened. "And do you admit you falsified evidence?" "Yes," Cole said steadily. "I altered the report to make it look like Duke was the dog who tracked the suspect. I did it because I was told to make the case stick. I regret it more than anything I've ever done." A murmur rippled through the gallery. "And if ordered," Green pressed, "would you produce documentation proving that the order came from Chief Daniels?" Cole hesitated. "I have notes. Recorded conversations. I kept them. Just in case." That was when the shouting started. From the back of the courtroom, someone yelled, "Liar!" All heads whipped around. Two men stood near the doors, the same plainclothes men Emily had seen the night before. Before the bailiff could react, one of the men moved toward the aisle, his hand slipping into his jacket. Duke's bark exploded through the courtroom like a gunshot. Chaos erupted. People screamed. The judge shouted for order. Cole leapt from the stand, putting himself between the men and the defense table where Emily and Lily sat. "Get down," he shouted. Emily grabbed Lily and ducked behind the table as Duke lunged forward, teeth bared. The man's hand emerged from his jacket, not with a gun, but with a folded envelope. He tossed it on the floor and back toward the exit, his partner dragging him away. The bailiff and two deputies sprinted after them, but the men were gone before they reached the hallway. The courtroom was buzzing with fear and confusion. Cole bent and picked up the envelope. He opened it carefully, his expression darkening with every line he read. "It's another threat," he said grimly. "They want me to recant my testimony. Or next time, it won't just be a note." The judge's gavel struck repeatedly. "This hearing will be suspended until law enforcement can guarantee the safety of this court." But Michael Trent stood suddenly. "No," he cried, his voice hoarse. "Your Honor, please, don't stop now. I've been waiting months for the truth to come out. Don't let them scare us into silence." Emily felt her own fear shift into anger. She stood beside him, Lily clinging to her. "He's right. If you stop now, they win." The judge hesitated, looking between Cole, the frightened jury, and the security officers now stationed at every door. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. This hearing will proceed under guard." Cole returned to the stand, Duke lying like a coiled spring at his feet. "Officer Cole," Green said, his voice lower now, "can you tell us exactly what evidence you have of the chief's involvement?" Cole pulled a small flash drive from his pocket and held it up. "Right here. A recording from the night I wrote the report. Daniels told me to make it stick. You can hear him say it." The courtroom buzzed again. "Your Honor," Green said, "the state requests this recording be played immediately." The judge agreed. When the audio played, the room went silent. Daniel's voice came through clearly. "We need this one closed, Cole. I don't care how you do it. Make it stick, or we all pay the price. By the time it ended, Daniel's face was stone. "Chief," the judge said slowly, "do you wish to respond?" But before Daniels could speak, the doors banged open again, this time with a group of uniformed officers entering. "Your Honor," one of them said, "Chief Daniels is under arrest for obstruction of justice and witness tampering." Gasps filled the room. Daniels stiffened as two officers approached him. "This is a mistake," he growled. "You have no idea what you're doing." But he didn't resist as they let him out. For a long moment, the room was completely silent. Then Judge Whitmore turned to the jury. "You have heard the evidence. The integrity of this case has been compromised. I will render my decision tomorrow morning. Court is adjourned." Emily let out a shaky breath, but her relief was short-lived. As she gathered Lily's things, Cole leaned down to her. "Don't go home tonight. If those men came once, they'll come again. Stay somewhere safe." Emily nodded, but her stomach twisted. Where could she go where they wouldn't find her? And as she followed Cole and Duke out of the courthouse, she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle wasn't over. If anything, it was about to get even more dangerous. Emily didn't go home that night. Cole insisted they drive to a safe house, an unmarked apartment the department used for witnesses in danger. It was small, barely furnished, but it had secure locks and a back entrance. Duke paced the perimeter, as if personally inspecting every corner before lying down near the door. Emily tried to get Lily to sleep, but the little girl was restless. "Mommy, are the bad men coming back?" she whispered. Emily smoothed her hair and forced a smile. "Not tonight, baby. Duke will keep us safe." Lily nodded, but kept clutching her stuffed bear as if it could shield her from the world. Cole sat at the kitchen table, cleaning his service weapon with slow, deliberate motions. His eyes were dark, his jaw tense. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "Not until Daniels is out of jail, or I'm silenced." Emily sat across from him. "Then we have to make it through tomorrow. Once the judge dismisses the case, it will all be out in the open. There'll be no reason to hide anymore." But Cole shook his head. "Exposure doesn't stop people like this. It just makes them desperate." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound Duke's slow breathing by the door. It was close to midnight when Duke suddenly lifted his head. His ears pricked forward, his body stiffening. Cole stood instantly. "What is it, boy?" Duke growled, low and dangerous. Then came the faint sound of footsteps outside. Cole moved to the window and peered through the blinds. A shadow darted across the alley. "Get down," Cole hissed. Emily grabbed Lily and crouched behind the couch, just as glass shattered. A brick crashed through the window, landing on the floor with a thud. Attached to it was another note. Cole snatched it up and read it under the dim lamp. "Last chance. Don't show up in court tomorrow. Next time, we don't knock." Emily's heart pounded. "We have to call someone." Cole was already dialing, but before anyone picked up, headlights appeared outside, cutting across the wall. A van screeched to a stop. Cole cursed. "Move!" Back door. They bolted through the tiny kitchen toward the rear exit, Duke at their heels. Just as they reached the door, the front door exploded inward with a deafening crack. Men in masks stormed in. Cole shoved Emily and Lily out into the alley. "Run! Get to the car!" Emily sprinted, clutching Lily, as Cole turned and drew his weapon. Duke whirled and charged the intruders, a snarl ripping from his throat. Emily risked one look back. She saw Duke leap, saw one of the men go down hard. Cole fired a warning shot, forcing the others to duck for cover. "Go!" Cole shouted again. Emily reached the car, threw Lily inside, and fumbled with the keys. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped them. Behind her, she heard shouting, then another gunshot. Her breath caught. Then Cole appeared, blood on his sleeve but alive. Duke limping slightly, but still alert. "Drive." Cole barked. Emily floored the gas, tires squealing as they tore down the alley. They didn't stop until they were miles away, parked under a dark overpass. Lily was crying softly in the back seat, clutching Duke's fur as if he were the only solid thing left in the world. Cole leaned back in his seat, breathing hard. That was no scare tactic. They meant to finish it tonight. Emily wiped at her tears. "So what do we do now?" Cole stared out the windshield. "We go back tomorrow. We finish this. And we make sure everyone sees them for what they are, even if it puts us in danger?" "Especially if it does," Cole said. "Because if we don't, this won't end. Not for me. Not for Michael Trent. And not for Lily." Duke let out a low whine, his head resting in Lily's lap. Emily reached back and stroked his fur, drawing strength from his calm presence. Tomorrow would decide everything, one way or another. By the time dawn broke, Emily felt like she hadn't slept in years. Her body ached, her mind throbbed, but there was no room for fear anymore, only resolve. Lily sat beside her in the car, quiet but awake, her small hand resting on Duke's back. The loyal shepherd hadn't left her side since the night before. His fur was still damp from the rain, his limp noticeable but steady. Cole sat in the passenger seat, his injured arm bandaged. He stared straight ahead as they approached the courthouse, jaw set like stone. When they arrived, police presence was doubled. Squad cars lined the block, and uniformed officers stood guard at every entrance. The attack on the safe house had turned everything into a citywide incident. Inside, the air was charged with tension. Reporters were already whispering about the overnight assault. Judge Whitmore entered, his expression grim. "We will resume where we left off," he said. "Mr. Green, you may proceed." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, after reviewing Officer Cole's testimony and the recording implicating Chief Daniels, the state has decided to drop all charges against Mr. Trent." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Michael Trent covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. His attorney placed a steadying hand on his back. But Green wasn't finished. The state also recommends a full investigation into the misconduct within the department that led to this false prosecution. Officer Cole's bravery in coming forward has shed light on systemic issues that must be addressed. The judge nodded gravely. "So ordered." It should have been over right there, but the side door opened, and two uniformed officers escorted Chief Daniels into the room in handcuffs. The once confident chief now looked gaunt, hollow-eyed, but his gaze still burned with defiance. The judge regarded him coldly. "Chief Daniels, you are formally charged with obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation. Do you wish to make a statement?" Daniels sneered. "You think this ends with me? I was doing what had to be done. You all want justice until it costs you something. You want safety until you see what it takes to get it." "Enough," the judge said sharply. "You will have your day in court. Take him away." As Daniels was let out, he turned his head just enough to glare at Cole. "You just destroyed everything," he said. Cole didn't flinch. "No," he said quietly. "I just saved it." When the door closed behind Daniels, the tension broke. The judge turned to Michael Trent. "Mr. Trent, you are free to go. This court apologizes for the miscarriage of justice you have endured." Michael stood, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, Your Honor," he said hoarsely. Emily found herself crying too, though she hadn't realized it until Lily reached up and wiped her cheek with a tiny hand. "Mommy," Lily whispered, "we helped." Emily smiled through her tears. "Yes, baby. You helped more than anyone." After court adjourned, reporters swarmed them outside, shouting questions, cameras flashing. "Miss Carter, how does it feel knowing your daughter's words cleared an innocent man?" Emily shielded Lily from the lights. "It feels like justice," she said simply. "But it shouldn't take a 3-year-old to make people tell the truth." Cole joined her, Duke trotting faithfully at his side. "She's braver than most of the cops I know," he said with a faint smile. "Is it over now?" Emily asked quietly. Cole nodded. "For Trent, yes. For Daniels, it's just beginning. And for the department, things are going to change. They have to." Lily bent down and kissed Duke's head. "Good doggy," she said solemnly. Duke wagged his tail for the first time in days. That night, they all gathered at Trent's house, his wife, his teenage son, his parents. The family had been living in limbo for months, their lives on hold, their name dragged through the mud. Now there was laughter, tears, and hugs. Trent knelt in front of Lily. "I don't know how to thank you," he said softly. "You saved my life." Lily grinned shyly. Doggy helped. Trent smiled and scratched Duke behind the ears. "Then I owe you both." Cole stood off to the side, watching quietly. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe. He knew there would be fallout, internal investigations, hearings, maybe even trials. His career might be over. But looking at Lily, at Michael Trent reunited with his family, he knew he had made the right choice. Later, as Emily and Lily were leaving, Cole caught her arm. "Thank you," he said. Emily shook her head. "No, Cole, thank you. You risked everything for the truth." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's the only thing worth risking everything for." Duke barked once, as if agreeing. As they drove home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her head resting against her bear. Emily glanced at her in the mirror and felt a wave of peace. The nightmare was finally over. And though she knew the world wasn't perfect, she knew something else too. Even the smallest voice, even 2 simple words, could change everything.